think we got it. All right, we are going to start with our prayer. So if everybody would please close your eyes and take a nice big deep breath. And let it all go. I am here only to be truly helpful. I am here to represent him who sent me. I don't have to worry about what to say or what to do because he who sent me will direct me. I am content to be wherever he wishes, knowing he goes there with me. I will be healed as I let him teach me to heal. Amen. And Connie, the prayers are in that envelope I gave you for later. Okay, so we're going to continue to work on the miracle principles, which are at the very beginning of the book. And I just want to reread the definition of a miracle. It's the change of mind that shifts our perception from the ego's world of sin, guilt, and fear to the Holy Spirit's forgiveness. It is the expression of joining with another that corrects and undoes the error of separation. Miracles transcend the laws of this world to reflect the laws of God. So basically, when we are coming from a place of guilt, sin, and fear in the world, which is where most of us are coming most of the time, and we stop and we ask to see it differently, we are then joining with another way of being or experiencing. So we are going to start with miracle principle number 47 today. We've been going through, it's at the very, very beginning of the book, like almost the first page or two. We've been going through the miracles and we're up to number 47. You get that there? Would you mind helping me? Thanks.
It's page 6. Page 6.
Find it? Okay, great.
Page 6.
Yes, great. Okay, so we did start working on this miracle a little bit last week, but we didn't get very far, so I think I'll just start from the beginning of it. So the miracle is a learning device that lessens the need for time. It establishes an out-of-pattern time interval, not under the usual law of time. In this sense, it is timeless. And I shared this chart of when you have a holy instant, which is basically asking for healing, or you're observing the world instead of being part of it, you're literally rising above the battleground. This is the battleground. This is time as it ticks along. And the moment you rise above the battleground, when you come back down, you literally have collapsed time. So this is time you would have had to play in the ego arena that you don't have to play in the ego arena any longer because it's been collapsed. So there's great value in rising above the battleground instead of being in the insanity of the world. And oftentimes I guess you could say the catalyst for us making that choice is whatever this is going on in my world is very painful. I don't know how to solve the problem. I'm upset, irritated, angry, and ready to blow sometimes. And this is saying, rise above it, ask me to, see it through my lens instead of yours. And when you return, you will return here, not back here 1 moment later, you will actually collapse time. So there's great benefit to asking for healing in this process. So it says a miracle is a learning device that lessens the need for time because time will begin to collapse. It establishes an out of pattern time interval because, again, instead of the tick, tick, tick of physical time, we're going to rise above time and we're actually going to collapse it. So this is what what it means by the out of pattern time interval, because normally we would just live life 1 moment at a time in the ticking of time. Yes,
I don't understand what
course concept of collapsing time.
Okay, all right.
Is it experienced as, how's that experienced?
Okay, for the most part, it's not experienced as anything other than I've asked for help, okay? Literally, the Course describes a holy instant as a moment out of time and space where you don't exist, okay? So literally, we are either aligned with the character in the dream called me, or I'm the observer of the character in the dream. And when I'm up here, then I'm no longer the character, I'm the observer of the character. When I'm up there, I'm rising above the battleground of time and space, and I am seeing what's going on instead of experiencing what's going on.
But how do you get to the?
Well, the way you get to the top is to recognize, it's kind of like becoming an observer of what the world is and what you're up to in the world.
And what if you don't like it?
What do you mean you don't like it? When you rise above it?
What if you don't like the world?
Oh, well, that's what we're all here for. Because we don't like the world very well. It becomes rather a difficult experience being in this world. Everywhere we turn, everywhere we turn, there's chaos, confusion, how am I supposed to deal with this? And I guess you could say the beauty of the awareness of that is we become less and less tolerant with the experience in the world. And we want an answer of where can I go? What can I do to have a different experience here? And what this is saying is when you rise above the battleground, at that moment, you're not this character any longer. You're the observer of the character. And when you're the character, you're unrolling time and making the illusion last longer. When you're up here observing the character, you're literally ending the need for time. So
Takes
it's
a long time though to get to that.
well, yes, it does in our experience, but we only have this moment, and whichever moment we are doing, whichever one of those choices are, that will be the speed up, I guess you could say, of the ability to do something different about it.
You're watching yourself.
Right.
In a play on the stage.
Correct.
You're watching yourself acting in a play. And you're also in the audience with Jesus.
Right.
Observing everything that's going on and not taking it personally. It's just something that's happening. It's got nothing to do with me. I'm just looking at it.
Right.
I mean, whether I'm in it or not, I'm just observing it.
Do you do that?
I really work
Right.
at that a lot, yeah.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of work to do.
Right.
that.
It is a practice, and this is called the Course in Miracles because it is a course in just like everything we've ever learned. You hear the concept and then it's understanding it and then beginning to apply it. And the whole world is set up to keep us down here. And so it does take practice, but as the desire to understand it on a deeper level continues to rise, our ability to do it more and more frequently also begins to rise.
And I think to answer your question, Lori, and we've all experienced this, whether we're aware of it or not, moments of presence, perfect presence, or what the Course would call a holy instant. In that moment, time doesn't exist. If you look back and you go to an experience of that, you'll see that there is no time in that moment.
Right.
There can't be.
That makes sense.
Right.
I'm
And
tripping over the word collapse.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
right.
But
But
I
think of
that's
it
what
right.
the collapse is, because time's collapsing.
Right. And if you're here, you're not here.
Mhm.
And when you come back to here, which we all do because we're too afraid to be here all the time, this literally is a portion of time that you don't have to play out in the future because it's been collapsed.
You can't understand.
Correct. Right.
It just is.
Well, yes, and it's not like I can say, okay, I left and now I've got a half an hour I don't have to play out. That's the result of it rather than a logical way of describing it per se.
You don't actually feel it.
No, 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 no. You don't even feel like you've left.
Maybe it's like I was driving here in a 35-mile zone, and there was a woman behind me blowing the horn and blowing, and I didn't even know she was there. Is that what
It could be, yes,
a part of it?
it could be, yeah. Yeah, did you have your hand up?
Oh, yeah, last week, you did a thing on the chart,
Mhm.
you drew a circle with the radius.
Oh, yes,
The
yes.
sticks coming out?
Yep.
I think I haven't seen that, but I.
Oh, yeah.
I've been thinking. about
Yep,
it.
no, I've done that before, but that's okay. Right, no, no,
And how, when you're in the instant,
yes,
it takes apart a little part, but then it also takes off a little part of all the other things that you're.
correct. And this, right, yeah, this is what Shelley was talking about, the diagram that I did. So if I might think I have a problem with a situation that's going on over here, and I rise above it and I ask for healing, and I actually start to erase a little bit of this because I actually come here. Okay, I'm not living here, I'm coming here. But not only does that help erase this, it actually starts to erase everything because everything's coming from the same place. So in that respect, I won't have to undo all the things. And again, I, as a human being, won't consciously be aware of what got taken care of because of this. That's kind of one of the things you sort of realize and trust or whatever, that this is what he's saying is going to happen. Yeah.
I just, because I think that's a great question.
Sure.
Lori. When I think about my experience with my neighbor.
Right.
She's like the devil.
Mhm.
And I always knew that she triggers me, but there was a moment out of time where nothing she said or did impacted me. It was like this sacred bubble or something between us where, I mean, she was really not nice.
Right.
But it didn't impact me at all. And I said what I needed to say in a very kind, gentle way, and she was still swearing at me.
Right.
But I didn't react to anything she said.
Right.
I just said something very loving to her. And to me, it was a moment out of time.
Right.
Because
Right.
she didn't stop doing what she always did. I wasn't doing what I always do.
Correct.
In terms of reacting.
Right.
And if I want to call it a moment out of time, if we want to look at that thing, what that did for me, I think, is it's progressing me along the path of this understanding.
Right. Right.
So nothing happened,
Right. Right.
but I have a somewhat of a deeper understanding of the concepts.
Right.
And I don't always have those
Right.
miracles like that. It doesn't always happen like that, but it was nice to have that experience because it can happen.
Yes. And you'll be changed forever as a result of that experience. And it wasn't Kathleen that said, okay, now I'm going to be here and I'm just going to be calm. It's an effect that comes as we keep asking to be healed and be shown. And we spend more and more time above the battleground observing instead of being the character. But it's a beautiful thing. And that, that to me, that's the value of practicing the course, because those moments transcend time. All right, so the whole idea is that the need we all share is to use time to help us realize that there is no time and get off the carpet of time, because as long as I'm in the carpet of time, and the carpet of time always represents the ego, the result of the ego. And when we're playing with the ego, we're always going to have guilt, sin, and fear, suffering, pain, dread, guilt, pain, intense, whatever, all the things that an ego represents. And if we like that, then go for it, enjoy it all you want. But if we're looking for an understanding that will take us beyond that, this is the road we might want to walk. All right, we have a massive ego problem with certain specific people around certain specific issues, which would take a tremendously long period of time to get off this carpet. So any one specific, and certainly we all have way more than one specific issues that I know many times get repeated over and over in many different ways. And we may think, oh, I already healed that one. And then 6 months goes by and then they show up in your face and it's, it's like starting all over. But what it's saying that literally every time we are asking for help, every time you are in the observatory position rather than in the character position, we are healing our mind. And every time that happens, parts of this journey are being erased. So eventually you will simply be the oneness in the middle. And all those other things won't call to you, won't pull to you. And just as Kathleen was describing, in the past, in the relationship with this person, the moment that person opened her mouth, she was in, defense mode. And that particular moment, the need for that defense was not there. Now, that doesn't mean 10 minutes later, she may not fall back into the same trap of going down that road again, but then we begin to apply what we've been doing more and more, and then eventually nothing will have an effect on us. And ultimately, this course is leading us to the point, much like Jesus, where they spoke of him being in the world, but not of the world, because he was completely aligned with his right mind. And then no matter what happened in the world, physically, mentally, or any other way, he was not affected by it because he wasn't running by the rules that take place within the illusion of the ego. And personally, I think that's a wonderful goal to be walking towards, because it's not much fun after a while being pushed around like a leaf in the wind with every time somebody looks at me funny or calls me a name or says something or does something, and I'm, just fall on the floor in misery and pain. And that's happening to all of us all day long in subtle ways. Yes.
I think we also have to own who we are, truly.
I think a result of doing this, I don't have to own who I am. I will know who I am.
It is what it is.
Right, but if I'm attached to Kathleen and her ways,
Mhm.
I see.
Because literally, guys, we're either here or here. And right now we're 95% of the time, maybe more here. Okay, but what I'm saying,
We own the choice.
we own the choice, but right, yeah.
Own the choice.
And I would say at this point, we need to own who I am as an ego. That's actually what it's asking us to do, is look at, here's this person who thought she was really sweet and nice, and the moment somebody does something, my claws are out. Well, that's not particularly loving. And yes, that's a natural reaction in the world, but that's not a natural reaction in someone who knows who they are. Right.
It's nice to know who you are too.
Well, but the point is, this is asking us to look at who you think you are. And as you become aware that me playing the part of an innocent victim, and we will talk about that as we go along, it requires that I have a perpetrator or somebody that is going to judge and attack me so that I'm justified to attack them back. But that's all about duality. Okay, and I want to know who I am as one. I don't know what one is. I know what this is. And I begin to realize this isn't serving me like we thought it was going to. And maybe I could have another choice. And Jesus offers that other choice. But I have to ask that other choice. I don't need to sit here and try to figure it out. I need to drop the story here and ask. That's what's going to take me over here most quickly. All right. So the miracle lifts us up above the world of time. Through our choosing to forgive this huge chunk of guilt, it carries us over and then drops us back down in time. So again, I choose, and then it carries us over and drops us over here and collapses the time that we would have had to live had we not arose above the battleground. It establishes an out of pattern time interval. And as an example of the amount of time was 1,000 years, but by lifting us up above the world, carrying us over and then dropping us back down, we have saved 1,000,000 years instead of 1,000. Okay, so it's like it really increases our ability to complete what we came here to complete and be done with it already. Very difficult relationship, one that brings us tremendous amount of anger, hurt, and resentment, guilt, anxiety, etc., then becomes a very powerful means if we let it for the working through a huge chunk of guilt. So instead of, you know, let's say this moment is a attack on your brother because they attacked you. Well, in the world would say they attacked you, you attacked them back. All you're doing with that is going like this into the world, pushing that carpet out. In the moment where you say, okay, and we talk about workbook lesson number 5, I'm never upset for the reason I think. Well, I think I'm upset because they just called me a name, and I'm going to go tell them how terrible they were. If I say, rise above the battleground, say, okay, Holy Spirit, you know, I'm hurt. This affected me, but you keep telling me there's another way to see my brother than what I'm seeing them. I want to know what that is. You're literally saying, I want to know what truth is. And in that moment, you've not only healed a part of your mind, you've offered that healing to your brother as well. Because that brother who just called you a name or whatever they did that upset you is calling for love because they are wounded. So whenever you don't respond, in other words, this is what we normally look like in conversations. You know, I'm going to get you, you're going to get me. I'm going to get you, you're going to get me. And the moment one of you stops the flow of the insanity of the kill or be killed motion or mindset, we're offering another way. And the other way is, I don't know. And that moment, this person is going to try to get us back to this because we're addicted to this. And if I can hold that, I'm literally saying to myself and to my brother, this is not the game I want to play anymore. I want to know what truth is. And that truth is not only about truth of me, it's the truth of my brother. Because you see, my brother is really the same as me. My brother isn't different than me. But in the dualistic thought system, I always see my brother as different. And we're always comparing and judging and attacking each other because of that. And in oneness, there's nothing to argue and fight about because there's just one.
There's also then you take a victim like that,
You take what?
a victim.
Well, okay.
You don't defend yourself and the person just keeps pushing and pushing and pushing because you do not say anything. You become a victim.
Right. But that's if you're here. Okay. If you rise above and you ask for healing, it's not you that's doing the healing. It's not you that's undoing this. It's you choosing to recognize what oneness is instead of duality. Yeah. And in the world, you may continue to do whatever we always do, but this is saying keep rising above the battleground and looking from that vantage point as well. And I give the example of if your roof is leaking and it's pouring down rain in your kitchen, it's a good idea to get a mop and clean up the floor. But if you don't get up on the roof and fix the roof, it's going to just keep running down and doing. And it's a good idea to mop so you don't fall, but we want to go to where the cause is. And from the perspective of the course, the cause is in our mind that chose for separation instead of oneness. Okay, and again, we're erasing a lot more than just what we think we're erasing. We're literally erasing in a much more vast way than we think. And we read last week, I think it was, this idea. In fact, I don't know if I don't know where it is off the top of my head, but this idea of when you forgive one person, you're really forgiving much more than what appears to be that one person or that one incident. It's much far reaching. And he even said, it could be healing someone you've never even met as a result.
Forgive yourself.
Well, and forgiving yourself. Yes, of course. Yeah. And every time you offer a miracle, you are really asking to forgive yourself. Right. And then it also filters out to your brother. But if you just want forgiveness for you and you want to get them, that's not going to cut it. Not going to cut it. All right. So we're going to turn to text page 8, paragraph 6. Okay, so the miracle minimizes the need for time. In the longitudinal or horizontal plane, the recognition of the equality of the members of the sonship appeared to involve almost endless time. However, the miracle entails a sudden shift from horizontal to vertical perception. This introduces an interval from which the giver and the receiver both emerge further along in time than they would otherwise have been. The miracle thus has the unique property of abolishing time to the extent that it renders the interval of time it spans unnecessary. There is no relationship between the time a miracle takes and the time it covers. The miracle substitutes for learning that might have taken thousands of years. It does so by the underlying recognition of perfect equality of giver and receiver on which the miracle rests. The miracle shortens time by collapsing it, but eliminating certain intervals within it. It does this, however, within the larger temporal sequence. And Connie, what I usually do is read it and then I go through it line by line. All right, so again, the miracle minimizes the need for time. So we're literally shortening our classroom in school. You know, you'll graduate faster. In the longitudinal or horizontal plane, the recognition of the equality of the members of the sonship appear to involve almost endless time. So again, in the time as it ticks, it would represent almost an endless amount of time, an endless amount of misery and judgment, attack, and you name it, the whole deal. However, the miracle entails a sudden shift from horizontal to vertical perception. So again, when I say help, I'm saying I want to see it from a higher level, not in the time frame as I normally live it. This introduces an interval from which the giver and the receiver both emerge further along in time than they would otherwise have been, because we're seeing ourselves and our brother from a different perspective. When I'm looking through the lens of time being ticked, I'm looking through the lens of the dualistic thought system. When I rise above, I'm saying, I want to know what oneness is. And oneness represents the idea that my brother and I are one. And that's why when I showed this, draw a few more lines because I erased them. Usually when there's a problem in the world, it's the problem versus me, right? I don't really care if the other person gets healed. I don't care if the other person has a good time. All I care about is me feeling better in a situation, okay? So when we're rising above, we're really in that, we've been talking a lot about that in the center where we're all one. I want to invite my brother into that oneness as well. And that oneness doesn't have anything to do with time and space and me getting my way as we normally look at situations in the world. I want to know what healing is. I don't know what the outcome of that is, but I don't want to play in the arena of I've got to be right so you can be wrong, which is the whole game that's played here. And not only is it the game that gets played here, it's literally the game that's required to play here. Because I have to have something, someone, or something that's going to irritate me or upset me so that I can play the part of an innocent victim. And as long as I need to play the part of an innocent victim, I will always search out for something or someone who will play that part. Over here, there is no innocent victim and perpetrator. We're all the same. Very different. The miracle thus has the unique property of abolishing time to the extent that it renders the interval of time it spans unnecessary. So again, collapsing time. There is no relationship between the time a miracle takes and the time it covers. Well, this is one that's a little tricky and irritating for us as egos because we're so used to push the button, TV starts, put the coffee machine on and it starts perking the hot coffee. And this is, I do this. It's none of my business when it unfolds, what it looks like, how it's gonna happen, what the results are gonna be. And we're very result oriented. So that's not a very easy concept for most of us to be embrace in a friendly way initially. But when it's asking us is do this, the results will begin to reflect because you are putting the choice for oneness in place of the dualistic place. And with dualism, there's always projection where I will see guilt, sin, and fear. When I choose for connection or healing, I'm then asking for seeing my brother the same as me instead of different. So it's not, and you were asking, Lori, kind of, how am I going to know I'm doing this right? Or what is this experience? And it oftentimes, there is no specific experience. But then as Kathleen shared her story, somewhere down the line, all of a sudden those pieces come together and you'll have an experience that will convince you there's something going on here that's not of me, that is healing this relationship. Yes.
So let's reverse that for myself, because I like something here. You trigger me,
Okay.
I'm pissed,
Right.
upset, angry, hurt, crying, whatever, all of it.
Absolutely.
raging. It's your fault
Yes.
because you triggered something in me. And I only care about myself. See, I love that piece.
I know. I saw you smirking over there. Don't think I didn't see that.
Because it's like busted. It's like, because if I'm honest, it is like,
Mhm.
yeah. And so I only care about me, not, I want to be fixed now.
Mhm.
And you did it. And so
Mhm.
now either you have to fix it or I'm gonna go attack back or something. I mean,
Absolutely.
It's like nuts.
It is nuts.
It's not like nuts.
Yeah. It's beyond nuts.
It's
Well, and it is
Yeah,
natural.
you know,
Yeah.
the way of being.
Right.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's nuts.
Well, it is nuts and we're addicted to nuts.
Yeah.
And, the whole deal of the separated state is kill or be killed. I'm going to get you before you get me. And they're trying to play the same game. And this is oftentimes on a subconscious level, but this is what's getting played out all the time. And there is never love there. It's impossible to love from that perspective.
So the trigger is the hook. And
Well,
we each have different ones.
Well,
And
true. And may I just add something before you go on? It's not the trigger. It's the fact that I have the doorbell that you can ring that says, I'm irritated now. Because if I didn't have that doorbell, as Jesus, when he came to knowing who he was, they could put him on the cross, they could call him names, they could spit on him, they could take his clothes away, they could do all that. His presence was totally still and silent because it didn't affect him because he knew who he was.
my confusion in the course is why is it that we focus so much on the ego and it's almost like it's a secret to know who we are? Like we don't look at that too much because we want to focus on all this other stuff about who we think we are.
Right.
I get that. We need to be aware of that. I mean, in the love of God, that was like a big thing for me. You know, it seems so ridiculous and obvious, but it wasn't to me.
Yeah.
I mean, it is, but it became really blaring just
Yeah.
this moment about it's about me.
Right.
And,
It's
Because I
always
always-
about me and
because
it's
I
all
always-
personal
because I
too.
always think I'm thinking about others and-
Mm.
but it's
No,
fine.
I truly believe I'm the center of the universe.
Yeah,
And you're
absolutely.
here just for me.
Yeah. And if you don't do it the way you're supposed to do it according to me, then I'm justified to attack you. Yes. Well,
Just
and
ignore it.
pardon me?
Just ignore it.
Well,
That's what I do.
it's, the course is really trying to help us understand that even if I ignore it, I still know it's there and it's still not getting healed. And that may be a way of dealing with it, but eventually we really want to go beyond it. So it's not even there that I have to pretend it's not there. But back to you, Kathleen, why do we focus on the ego instead of this? And the answer is because I can sit here and talk about this all day long. from now till the day I die. And I won't do the work that is required to remove the blocks to the awareness of love that will take me to what this is. And where this takes me to is not going to be anything that I can sit here and imagine or fabricate in my mind, because I'm doing it from here. So this course focus is literally about removing the blocks to the awareness of love. And the only way I can remove the blocks to the awareness of love is to recognize what the blocks are.
Why don't you just take that off that side of the chart?
Well, it's sort of like the top of
Heaven
the,
is all that.
right. But it's almost like the top of the mountain. We know the top of the mountain is the space I want to get to. If I don't have that, I'm just going to falter around here. But I'm not going to know what the top of the mountain is until I've climbed all the steps that were required to get to the top. So I can sit here and talk about how wonderful it's going to be at the mountain, but if I don't start stepping my feet up the mountain, I'm never going to have that experience. And that's this, you're right. And literally there are, many teachers out there that take all the lovely places in the course, and there's like delicious, beautiful, unbelievable things, presented in the course. But if I just focus on those, I won't understand, this is all about me. You've been coming here for 20 years. Today you heard, this is all about me. Which means I don't care about my brother, really. I might, say nice things once in a while, but I really it's all about me. And I'm not going to get to heaven with just me.
Could you say that it's like just motivation for us?
Oh, sure, absolutely.
To get out of the ego,
Right.
or just to see them, that exists?
Yeah, exactly. And again, just like the experience you shared with your neighbor, you now have the experience of what you want more of. That was noteworthy. And that came as a result for all the times that you asked for help to get to understand who you really were. And the experience will speak a whole lot louder than sitting here thinking what it's going to be like when I'm in heaven.
We were saying,
I have a good quote by Carl Jung, that kind of goes along with this. Those people who are least aware of their unconscious side are the most influenced by it. So if I'm not aware of what's going on with my ego,
Right.
it's gonna, that's all gonna be my experience,
Yep.
is the suffering of the ego. It's like being an alcoholic.
Right.
I don't, do I want to become sober? Absolutely. But I need to deal with my alcoholism, my addiction. And the problem is, it's our belief and our addiction to the ego. And if we don't look at that, we're never going to be healed.
I see, and I think what I'm saying too is I want a taste of the benefits.
But you had the taste of the benefit. That moment with your neighbor was the taste of the benefit. And Kathleen, and I know you even shared, you could not have imagined that moment would ever occur. Yeah. And
Because she was being the devil.
well, exactly. But the point was, she was still being the devil, but
As I was, it was even worse.
well, and that oftentimes happens because you have a contract with her and you weren't fulfilling the contract any longer. Yep. But there was a difference. Yeah. Okay.
To see the possibility of another way.
Willingness is key.
No, definitely. And the recognition that I'm in too much pain to do this on my own, and me trying to do it on my own is never succeeded anyways. That's a real catalyst. It's sad in a way that we have to come to that, but that takes us to the other side. All right, so I'm going to read that line again. There is no relationship between the time a miracle takes and the time it covers. So that moment, and again, we only have one moment at any time. This moment is the only time I have to play with this. And I can either choose for the ego or choose for the Holy Spirit. And the results will either be, if I'm choosing for the ego, the results will always be some form of projection of guilt, sin, and fear. when I stop and say, wait, I don't want this anymore, help. I'm literally saying, I'm going to take everything that I think I know, everything I have envisioned, all of it, I'm going to put it over here. And I want him to fill it up with an answer that comes from him instead of from me. And I don't know what that asking is going to bring. And as I mentioned, the miracle that we read last week, that miracle could be so far reaching that I don't have a clue that one moment that I chose differently, what the results of that would look like. All right, the miracle substitutes for learning that might have taken thousands of years. And I don't know about you, I like the idea of saving time because, it's not all that much fun here sometimes. It does so someday, yeah, right. I was trying to be nice, right? It does so by underlying recognition of perfect equality of giver and receiver on which the miracle rests. And what that basically means is, again, if I'm just asking for me, not going to happen. If I'm asking, I don't know, I want to see love through your eyes. And when I'm asking to see love through his eyes, the only way I could see my brother is through the lens of love. So I, as an ego, cannot see my brother as love. I mean, I might go, yeah, I love you. I'm going to send you love and all that kind of stuff. But I don't feel that love because I'm coming from the lens of two. And within two or duality, that oneness isn't available. So if I'm trying to conjure up the answer over here, it's not going to happen. When I stop and say, all right, and it's, there's nothing wrong with starting with the litany of the upset or irritation you're going through. Saying, okay, Holy Spirit, this is my experience, and there's no way I can think how I could possibly love my brother in this situation. But you keep telling me there's a way. I want to know what that way is. Then you put this aside and allow this to come to filter in. But you can't hold them both. There's, even the Bible talks about you can't serve two masters. What it really meant is you can't hold on to the ego and play in the arena of the Holy Spirit at the same time. Now you can pick one up and then drop it back down, back and forth, but in any given instant, it's either one or the other. All right. And again, this idea of equality, because my brother and I are one. If I'm seeing my brother through the lens of duality, I don't see my brother as one with me. I see my brother as the problem that took my peace away instead of the recognition that my peace was lost when we chose for separation instead of oneness. It has nothing to do with my brother. My brother is now just the trigger that pushes the button that reminds me that this is what I chose. So we then take what the ego set up to have me justified to hate my brother, and we use it for a different purpose. And the different purpose is, now I know I've lost my peace, which has to mean I've chosen for separation instead of oneness. And now I can do something about it. So literally my brother, even though it's very irritating and upsetting oftentimes, is really my gift, because the only way I can know what's going on in my mind is by the fact that my peace has been disrupted, because my peace doesn't get disrupted here. Okay, the miracle shortens time by collapsing it, thus eliminating certain intervals within it. It does this, however, within the larger temporal sequence. So again, it's going to happen within the concept of what we're living in as we rise above the battleground. So Ken was saying, and one thing I read, that Helen once was complaining to Jesus, how come my life is so difficult? And Ken mentioned that to anyone else, her life would have not seemed difficult at all. Externally, she did not have a very hard life, but internally was very painful to her. So you might say, but I have this problem, this problem, this problem, and they're really horrible, terrible problems. You may see some little old lady swinging on the swing in their porch that is just looks so pious, and she could be in more pain than you are. So there's no way we can see or evaluate what's going on internally. And the bottom line is, as the Course talks about, doesn't matter if I broke my fingernail and I've lost my peace, or if somebody bombed my house and I've lost my peace. If you're not at peace, you're in the ego. And if you're in peace, then you're in connection with love. So it's about, where am I in this moment? All right, so it would be much easier in terms of requirement. You are walking, okay, so this is what Ken said to her. She got an image of Jesus of a mountain, and he said, you are walking through the mountain. And this is the practice of the Course. Instead of going above and down the other side, which would take a very long time, we are actually going through the mountain. Very different. And as we know, if you were going through the mountain, it would be harder work. If you've ever watched them drill a mountain to put a roadway in, that's a lot of work. And that's basically what the Course is about, is saving time, but oftentimes more challenging. It would be much easier in terms of requiring less effort if you walked up the mountain and down the other side, but it would also take much longer. This is a course in saving time, but it can seem difficult, like an accelerated college course, but it will take less time, but it will also be more challenging. While walking through it, you will save time, but it is like walking through very difficult, very painful situations, which in the usual course of events would have taken you many, many lifetimes. So he's not even talking about saving time in this lifetime. He's talking about the possibility of even other lifetimes. The Course aims at saving time by having more and more people have their minds healed more quickly, so the plan of atonement can be speeded up so that people can find peace more quickly. But the one people that is most important for me to focus on is this one. Because if I'm experiencing the lack of peace in any given moment, this is offering me a way to walk through that. So this is why many people, when they begin the course, things seem to get worse. And, it's my experience, a lot of times it'll get better for 10 minutes and then it gets worse because it gets you hooked and you come and then you go. And then it starts, happening a little bit more challenging. And he said, it's not because God is punishing you. It is really because you're asking to have this undone. And, many people in the course, we start our day by saying, I want to see life more clearly through your eyes. So we're really inviting the classroom to show up. But I used to say, it's like we ask for help and we want the fairy godmother to touch us all in the head, say, oh, good job, you did it, great, great. And instead, what happens is everything that needs to be healing comes pouring out. And then your response is, am I going to look at this through the lens of the Holy Spirit, or am I going to fall into the trap of the ego? So we're asking, but we didn't realize what we were asking for.
That reminds me of, I think it was Christian America who was questioning about why he's open mirror. He said, I don't mind what happens.
Right, exactly. Well, when we come to that point, Beata, yes, literally, if I knew this was a dream or a play, and I was a player in, an actor in the play, I would play the part of, all the contortions that an actor would play. But I would know, even if I was killed in the play, I would know I'm not dead. Nothing happened. I'm an actor. And so a lot of this practice is to come to the point where I believe that. I don't just think that's a possibility. I live from that place. And right now, we use the illusion to help us recognize that, oh, I guess I'm not there yet because that one got me. That one hooked me. And it was painful and it wasn't a lot of fun.
But even when that's happening, we can still rise above it and look down on it. And, you
If
know,
we're in that practice,
how
absolutely,
can
yes.
we-
Yep.
I remember experiencing that, just being, not recently, but horribly, horribly miserable, and looking in the mirror, just sobbing. Looking, who is that creature?
Right,
in the
right.
mirror there, you
Yep.
know? And, I was really outside of it all.
Yeah,
But also having the trust that I'm already going with God. That's huge.
yeah, there is comfort to that, yeah.
Huge.
And as the course promises, yeah,
This thing with time, you know, it doesn't matter. I don't care.
Mhm.
I don't care.
right,
I know I'm gonna get there.
indeed.
It
Indeed.
doesn't matter how long it takes.
But the beauty of this is even if you don't care, it's
an
gonna
attitude.
unfold that well,
That's
yeah,
my rebellious attitude.
right, yeah,
Yes.
okay. Absolutely, okay. All right, so again, Ken also said, you know, when you're working with the Holy Spirit, be careful what you ask for because you will get the answers. You will get his answer, not necessarily the one you were looking for. All right. All righty. So again, it undoes time, even if you don't care about the fact that it's undoing time, it will undo time because that's a natural effect of that experience. But the bottom line is, as Beata was saying, is in this moment, I can be in peace where in the past I wasn't in peace in this moment, and that's huge. All right, so a miracle is the means the Holy Spirit uses to teach us that we are not the victims of the world we see. Our problems are not what others or the world do to us, but rather what we believe we have done to ourselves. And what do we believe we've done to ourselves? Is we believe we were in heaven and we chose to leave heaven because we wanted to be in charge, which meant I've lost my connection with what heaven is, and now I'm faltering in the world alone, afraid, abandoned, but it was me that abandoned myself. So I'm going to read that again. The miracle is the means the Holy Spirit uses to teach us we are not the victim of the world we see. And this course is so adamant throughout, says it over and over in different ways, that I am not the victim of the world that I see. But that's not my experience. My experience is I woke up this morning, I was whistling on the way to work, and then somebody cut me off and he's an idiot. How dare him do that? Or my boss, you know, complains about my work or whatever the specific that shows up in the form. But the bottom line is, once again, if I did not have the alignment with the ego, I would not be affected by anything that happens in the world. Yes.
So I first abandoned myself
Yes, ma'am.
because I made that, because I went to sleep.
Yep.
I fell asleep.
Yep.
Rained it in there.
Absolutely. You know, again, we have the throne. There's only one person allowed on the throne at one time because there's only one chair. And in oneness, we got all the effects that God gave us, which were love and peace, joy, connection, innocence, and we're all the same. The moment we said, no, God, get off the throne, I'm coming over here, my turn. We lost all the effects that he had. They're still there, but we can't experience them because we're all focused on this now. And now there's a God and a me. I'm afraid of the God because I think he's gonna do to me what I think I did to him. I'm separate from him, and now there's guilt, sin, and fear because I think I did something terrible. And God says, nothing happened, come home. But
How did I abandon myself?
because you are the effect of your Father who is love. You don't have access to that because you believe the opposite now. So you abandon the truth of who you are. And you abandoned, well, yes, you got scared as a result because you think it happened, you think it's real. And you think you did something so horrible to God that he would never, right, come back and let you back in. And the course, as the course is saying, he's right there, arms open and saying nothing happened. You're just playing in the silly dream that you believe you've done something horrible. Come back home and I'll show you that you're loved. Pardon me?
Same thing,
Absolutely.
you know, I'm in love with you, well, I'm scared, then you run away, and that was like.
Well, yes, that's exactly what we do. We repeat that concept over and over within the concept of the illusion, and we blame the illusion on that. But what the real situation is, it's because of what we harbor in our mind. And then it automatically gets played out into the world and it gets reflected and projected into the world that way. And then we spend all our time here trying to fix the person that won't love me anymore. And I hate them because they won't love me, but I never recognize that if I rise above the battleground and realize that was the choice I made, and now I can make another choice, I'm just going to be running back and forth here forever and ever.
Yep.
And again, that's where the time gets saved, because now I realize what the problem is and I can solve it, as opposed to here where it can never be solved. It's impossible to solve here. So this course is really leading us to where the real cause is, so the cause can be healed instead of looking in the effects and just running around chasing our tail, which is why most of us are here, because we've attempted to do it on our own in oh so many ways, and with very little help. And it's tricky because within the illusion, I can let go of this relationship and go find another one. And for 10 minutes, that relationship looks a little bit nicer, but then something will happen with that one. And then I'll drop that one and I'll go find another one. But eventually you realize, I've been chasing around, I get a little bit and it's nice, but then it falters again. And there's nothing in this world that can fill us with the love of God, because nothing in this world is capable of filling us with the love of God. And yet we keep looking in the world to have it be filled with the world, which, since we didn't know there was another option, of course we would do our best within the world to do that. But once again, I think everybody is looking at a higher level. There's got to be another way, as Helen and Bill came to that moment of, we've been doing this on our own, trying to figure it out. It's not working.
So dumb. So we want to fill ourselves with the love of God.
Yes. And whether that's with drinking, sex, alcohol, shopaholic, workaholic, whatever works for anybody for any given time, but those will never fulfill the love that we're really seeking for, which is to remember who we were and return back to love. And, there's literally places in the course where it says all those substitutes are literally in opposition to God. They're keeping you from that connection with God. And that doesn't mean you throw away all your relationships. It means you use your relationships for a different purpose. All right, let's take started. Okay, so we left off with this concept of, I want to be a victim of the world I see. And the problems we have are not mine, they're yours. And we know that one prayer that says, I am responsible for what I see. I choose the experiences that I decide upon the goal I would achieve. And everything that seems to happen to me, I ask for and receive as I have asked. And throughout the course, Jesus reminds us of concepts along those lines, of which most of us are probably doing this, because that doesn't make any sense to us, because it doesn't appear that what I see in the arena of my life is what I've chosen for. And it's not even the specifics, it's my interpretation of the specifics. If I'm looking through the lens of duality, or I like to use the sunglasses, if I'm looking through the lens of my sunglasses, everything I see is tainted. And when I take off the glasses, everything I see is clear. So it's not necessarily even the specific of what's happening, because like Kathleen said it before, the neighbor was still yelling at her, even though her experience of the yelling was not the same effect as it was before her mind had shifted in that way. So I think if no other concept is probably any more difficult than the idea in the course of I am responsible for what I see, because that's absolutely not the way it is experienced. It's experienced as though I popped into this world, an innocent victim of my very birth. I didn't ask my parents to go do that stuff, so that I showed up, and then it has trickled down ever since. And whether I had good parents, then I'm looking through the lens of the world. If anybody that does something my parents didn't do that was nice, I'm going to attack them. Or if they were rotten parents, I'm going to look at my parents. It was my parents' fault that I'm not having a better time here. And so it's everywhere. It's enmeshed in our very essence of who we think we are. And, I think collectively we all experience this. It's very challenging to literally accept and then completely accept this idea. I've chosen this. This is what I want, so that I can play the part of an innocent victim, so I can have a perpetrator and judge the perpetrator as my problem. So it's repeated over and over in the course, and Marianne will do so as well. All right, so revelation unites us directly with God, the miracle, through undoing the belief of separation in our minds, and joins us with each other. Revelation is not the correction, that is the miracle, but it helps us to remember that this is not the real world. So we keep asking to see from a different lens, and it literally is the difference between looking at the world like this and looking at the world like this. And I just take the lie, the story, and push it to the side to allow the answer to come forth. Okay, so we're going to, if anybody wants to read along, we're going to go to text 652 in a few minutes, but I want to read a little bit of something else, but 652, paragraph 8, if anybody wants to read along. And the section we're going to start, although we're going to start a paragraph before that in another section, is called the end of injustice. And I looked up the word injustice, and it's the absence of justice, violation of right or rights of another, unfairness. Injustice is a quality relating to unfairness or undeserved outcomes. And couldn't we all say we walk around in the world with a whole lot of injustices? Whether it's done to me or if it's done to something I see on TV in other countries being bombed, whatever it may be. And from the world of the illusion, these are all extremely painful, difficult. They seem very real. And yet what the Course is trying to say is there's another way to look at even the most horrific experiences. So the word injustice is a term the Course uses to describe the ego's view of the world as unjust, a world in which evil and sinful people are vicious and cruel to each other. And I'm sure we've all seen that, experienced that, and fallen into that with, that's just the nature of the beast on planet Earth. This injustice must then be brought to the ego's justice. So who's on the throne? The ego. I'm going to take care of things. We don't need to call on God. I'll take care of them. So this injustice must then be brought to the ego's justice, which we insist on so we may avoid the just punitive punishment of our sinfulness. So in other words, we're afraid to go back to God because we believe that we are going to be punished for our sinfulness, which was to separate from God. So instead of that, we then judge our brother and attack our brother and play the part of an innocent victim, which will never solve the problem, but that's the game that's been set up with the ego. And it's never going to work because those cruel, sinful, evil people just keep coming out of the woodwork, don't they? And, you know, those cruel, sinful, evil, vicious people could be your child leaving the socks in the middle of the living room, okay? It doesn't have to be somebody bombing another country, as we see in the news every day. It's anything that takes my peace away. And this is asking us to examine, how do I respond in this moment? Okay, and so again, this whole idea that this whole setup was done because once we chose to separate, we then felt we did something awful and terrible and that we could never be forgiven for what we thought we did. We couldn't tolerate that guilt, sin, and fear in our mind, and then we projected it into the world, dumped it into our brother, and then played the part of an innocent victim. And as I shared, I think it was last week, it's no different than if I go to a candy store, steal some candy, take the candy and put it in my best friend's drawer. The police come to my door, say, "Where's that candy?" And I say, "Oh, my friend has it in her drawer." It's exactly the setup of what this is. I don't want to be responsible for the belief that I separated from God. So I'm going to dump it in my brother. My brother's going to show that to me, and then I'm going to attack my brother because of what I see my brother doing. And it's all one big, huge setup. And the absurd thing of it all is that God of the Course says, come back home, nothing happened. This is just a sick dream that you keep reinforcing by your belief in it. And when you play the game down here of pointing the finger at something or somebody else as a lack of your peace, you're recycling that time and making the carpet roll out further. And when we can step above and say, okay, Holy Spirit, I want to know what truth is, we begin to collapse time that we don't have to play that game as long. And we're going through the tunnel instead of up and above and down on the other side. Okay, so we're going to read the paragraph right before it says the end of injustice, which is paragraph 8 on 562. Now is the temple of the living God rebuilt as host again to him by whom it was created. Where he dwells, his Son dwells with him, never separate. And they give thanks that they are welcome, made at last. Where stood a cross stands now the risen Christ, and ancient scars were healed within his sight. An ancient miracle has come to bless and to replace an ancient anemone, I believe I'm pronouncing that right, that came to kill. In gentle gratitude to God, the Father and the Son return to what is theirs, capitalized, and will forever be. Now is the Holy Spirit's purpose done, for they have come at last. So this is really showing us or describing the results of when we use what the Course is asking us to use will bring us. He's saying, now the temple of the living God rebuilt as host again to him by whom it was created. So we release the story of the ego, and the temple that was given us in the beginning is given back to us. Where he dwells, his Son dwells with him, never separate. And keep remembering that these two sides of this chart are like a coin. We know if you flip a coin and heads is up, tails is there, but it's hidden because it's turned over. Okay, well, we're looking at the side of the coin that says, I have chosen against love and I'm separate and God and I are separate. And the results are always guilt, sin, and fear, separation, death, and projection, and we're different. So the other side just needs to be flipped over, but I can't hold this side and flip it over. So I have to be willing to offer it to him and say, hey, you keep telling you have a better idea. I want to know what it is. And he'll flip that coin and show us what it is. And the results of this will be the reflection of that love that we now align with because we have chosen for it. And they give thanks that they are welcome made at last. So because we finally come to the recognition that here's the answer that's being offered to me, and I take a hold of that golden ring. Where stood across stands now the risen Christ, and ancient scars are healed within his sight. So the effect of making that choice or making the relinquishing your hold on believing what you think is right is literally the answer to healing. And we'll put down the cross and we'll welcome the risen Christ, and healing will happen. So an ancient miracle has come to bless and to replace an ancient enmity. An enmity means hostility. So it's going to heal the hostility that came to kill. So again, these two are opposites. Which one do I want to be playing in? Whichever one I play in is the one that's going to bring forth within the world the results that I've chosen. But if I choose for the ego separation, I will perpetuate that ancient hostility because this is a thought system of kill or be killed. And when I switch it around, as it says, in gentle gratitude to God, the Father and the Son, return to what is theirs, capital T, and will forever be. So we'll return to the gifts that God offered us and continues to offer us. And one of the reasons I wanted to read this paragraph before we go into the next section is for that word theirs, because what it says is return to what is theirs. This is my true heritage and my true beingness. This is just part of the dream. This is the insanity of choosing the separation or choosing the opposite. Now is the Holy Spirit's purpose done, for they have come, for they have come. So the course talks a lot about the idea of purpose. What is the purpose? Is your purpose to align with truth, or is your purpose to continue to perpetuate separation? And when you're choosing for the ego, the result will always be, I'm going to continue to perpetuate separation. And I can't hold my brother in a place of guilt and have the other result. So what we're really being asked to in these initial stages is to observe, I want to kill my brother. And you look at it, you smile at it, and don't judge it or attack it. Just be aware that's what's running the show right now. And when I can do that without judgment or condemnation, I'm up here. And again, I'm not identifying with this character, and I'm not pushing out the carpet of time. And reach over here. There's actually a dot here. If I can reach it without standing up, so I'll stand up. There's a dot here. I'm either up there or I'm down here at any given moment. When I'm here, I'm playing the character of Marianne. And when I rise above, I'm identifying with the decision-making part of my mind. The more time I spend here, the less time I have to undo the world. The more time I spend here, the more the carpet unrolls. And the question becomes, what do I want? Do I want to spend more time in the observatory mode, or do I want to continue to attack and judge my brother? And, you know, at the break, I was talking to somebody and they were saying this is not easy. And I would agree 100%. We're so addicted to this thought system. It is not easy to stop and turn and go the other direction. Whether it's observing or asking for help, the automatic response is for the ego because we've been doing this for so long. And anyone that's ever been in any type of a addiction type program knows that when you first come, number one, you don't want to do the work because that's no fun. But somehow if you stick with it and you keep working on it, eventually the attraction for the addiction just slowly starts to have less and less power over you. And oftentimes people, once they've pretty much healed from the addiction, will look back and think, oh my gosh, what was I thinking doing that all the time? That ran my life. There was, I wasn't there. The addiction was running my life. And quite literally, this addiction is running our life, not just from the smoking or the drugs or whatever the specific is, it's running our whole life. And it's, it's pretty gelled in our awareness. And yet we only have this moment to make a choice. So I think a lot of times we think, well, we were talking about the mountain before, looking up at that mountain, that seems like almost impossible. But if I only have this moment and I really concentrate, what do I want in this moment? Then it makes the ride very different.
And I think the course really wants us to be aware of when the ego is running the show, I'm allowing it to run the
Yes,
show.
well, absolutely. In workbook 23, it talks about the idea, this is the experience you're having, it's because this is what you want to. And that's real hard to digest at first as well. But the bottom line is, if that wasn't what I wanted, I'd be here. Done.
Period.
Yeah, done and period. But because we carry, in my experience, we carry that heaviness of I'm bad, I'm guilty, I'm terrible. It's hard for me to even own that I'm here because I want to be here. And the end result of not being here means I want to be here on a very deep, perhaps subconscious level, but it's running the show right now because it's got the most power. And again, I only have this moment to make a change or a difference. So don't worry about how long it takes or where it's going to go. Recognize, what do I want now? When that conflict shows up in your life, and initially you won't even be able to become aware of it. Eventually you'll start to become aware of it. And then even after you have become aware of it, you'll still continue with the intent of separation. But very slowly, you'll step back more and more, and there'll come a point where there's really a conscious decision of, I could choose differently in this situation. And even then you may say, no, not ready yet. But at least we know there's another option at this time, which we didn't before. Yeah.
Did you say, both of you said the same thing, maybe differently, that if the ego is running the show, I let it?
Yes, you want it.
That's interesting. I'm working with a new therapist right now with some things in my life, and she said, well, you let it happen.
Mhm.
It's like taking that power back
Yes.
and owning it. I allowed something, I let it, because I'm like, well, I have no choice. Yes, you do.
Well,
You
but
let it.
yeah.
But
Well,
that's
yeah.
powerful right now.
It's very powerful. And the course would say, I would say the course would take another step, and it would say, not only did you allow it, you wanted it because you couldn't be an innocent victim without it. And that's, that's such, it doesn't sound like that's a big deal, but that's so huge. Because I can't play the part of an innocent victim without something or someone that's going to cause a problem so that I can be an innocent victim. And there are no innocent victims over here. That word, the word innocent shows up over here, but not innocent victim, because when I'm over here, not only am I innocent, so is my brother. But over here, innocent victim runs the show. And I want to be an innocent victim so I can pull this off.
And you can be aware of that.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm flipping it. We're using that in a different way, but it can be.
Yes,
used
of
both
course.
ways,
Yeah.
actually.
I hear.
Letting the Holy Spirit, I let the Holy,
Right.
choose, I chose, I allowed it, I let it. It's still a letting and allowing.
Right.
To choose for the Holy Spirit.
Right. Yep. Yes, and it takes a big man or gal to stand up and really own, okay, if this is where I am, this is what I want.
Right,
I want-
nobody else let it, I let it.
Absolutely.
And that's like a big deal.
It's
to
a
me,
very big deal.
Because there's nobody to blame.
Nobody to blame. And as I was taught years and years ago, the good news, let's see, the bad news is I now am totally responsible. The good news is because I'm responsible, I can do something different. Where in the past, I was truly an innocent victim of circumstances beyond my control. But because I've been in this place most of forever, to turn that around and stop the flow of that it's going to take some practice,
And
just
you
like,
was unconscious before.
well, it was
Some
unconscious.
crap happened. I mean, I was a little kid.
Yep.
I mean,
Yeah, but
unconscious, you know,
Yep.
I still have a choice.
yes,
to
and
Allow or let.
yes,
that
and
continue.
correct. And Ken told a story about Bill, who at one point in time, his father came in and physically destroyed his office. Okay, so, that would be a big thing for most of us to deal with. And of course, Bill was upset, irritated, and angry, unjustifiably attacked, blah, 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 blah. And Ken at one point further on said, he chose to keep holding that thought system. And, yeah, his father physically did that, but is he going to hold his father in that place? Which means I got to be over here and I can't be over here. But am I going to let my father off the hook and ask to see it through the lens of love? And that, again, it takes a big person to be able to flip that around because we're so addicted to kill or be killed, our natural response and suffering. Well, and the bottom line is when I'm tired of suffering, I will, catch on that there's another way here that's much more valuable to me. Keep remembering, we're the ones that made this choice to be on the throne. We're now recognizing from the course, the effects of making that choice are not working for me very well. If everywhere I look, there's a problem and I can't solve the problem, and this is saying to me, yes, you can solve the problem, but that means you got to get rid of all the things you thought were the problem and release that, and he'll show you what the answer is. But that, again, I have to be in pain enough oftentimes before I'm willing to drop everything.
And you still mop up. the floor.
And you mop up the floor until it stops.
I mean, you can still take some action.
Absolutely, as well as you should. Yes. Absolutely. All right, so we are going to move on to the next section called the end of injustice. So I read the definition of injustice. So the answer would be justice, right? So he's saying the end of injustice. And, he's going to take this a little differently than what most of us would look at it because he always does, which again is pretty irritating for the ego, but that's okay. And though the entire section is absolutely amazing, I'm actually just going to start with paragraph 3, and I'm only going to read one line there, and then we'll move on to 4. So first line in paragraph 3 is unfairness and attack are one mistake, so firmly joined that where one is perceived, the other one must be seen. So I've been unfairly treated and I must attack because they've done it to me, because I'm not responsible in the ego world. In what this is teaching us, I have chosen this. But as long as I'm playing in that deal, I'm attacked. My job is to attack that. And I must see you as behaving unjustly because I want you to be the sinner and not me. See, I don't want to have the responsibility for having chosen to separate. If I project it into the world, now I can play the part of an innocent victim so that you can play the part of my perpetrator, and I'm off the hook. And it's no different than the Candy I was talking about. The police are in her house, digging in her drawer, me, innocent victim. But on one level, inside, whether I'm consciously aware of it or not, I always know that I carry the blueprint of what really happened. And that's why when somebody looks at me funny or somebody fires me or whatever, or anybody or anything out there leaves their socks in the middle of the room. Why it triggers me so deeply is because they're pushing the button that I chose not to look at. And this is saying, use that to recognize what's going on, what that blueprint is, and question, is that blueprint where I want to be now? Or do I want to choose differently? And until that is done, we're going to continue to recycle and recycle in the wonderful carpet of time. So this makes my counterattack and self-defense fair, behind which God's rightful attack on you, so I will escape his punishment. So when we take charge on the throne, we've literally become God. We say, I'll take it from here, God. I'll even take the punches for you. But none of that's what's really going on. And I have to make my brother guilty in order for me to play this ridiculous game. So if we think we're loving, kind, adorable people, inside there's a whole lot more going on that is absolutely not loving at all. So I need sinful bodies to pull this off. We really love the evil doers. You cannot be unfairly treated. Separation from the source is the ultimate unfairness, not what others have done to us. And so we keep coming back and coming back and coming back. The problem doesn't lie here. The problem lies here. And once again, before we knew that, of course, we did the best we could to manipulate the world and try to make it be a little bit more tolerant. But will never take us to a place of peace and connectedness, because we're not going to where the cause is. And until that's healed, never going to happen. All right, so we're going to move on to paragraph number 4, and you're just going to love the first line. Beware of the temptation to perceive yourself as unfairly treated. We should have this tattooed on our forehead, on our arm, and on our leg, because none of us believe that. Even if we intellectually have some slight clue of it, we still don't believe it. Because if anybody or anything in the world goes awry, my immediate reaction is attack or kill or fix or change or whatever it may be. It is not, oh, this is perfect, this is the way this is supposed to be. We're just not at that place yet. And that's, again, part of the digging through the middle of that mountain. But we must be up for it, because here we are. All right, so beware of the temptation to perceive yourself unfairly treated. In this view, you seek to find an innocence that is not theirs, but yours alone, at the cost of someone else's guilt. And I'll read through this and then I'll find some of the juicy parts. Can innocence be purchased by the giving of your guilt to someone else? And is it innocence that your attack on him attempts to get? Is it not retribution of your own attack upon the Son of God you seek? Is it not safer to believe that you are innocent of this and victimized despite your innocence? Whatever way the game of guilt is played, there must be loss. Someone must lose his innocence that someone else can take it from him, making it his own. Now, this is a powerful little paragraph. All right, so again, beware of the temptation to perceive yourself unfairly treated. If you don't do anything this week other than observe how many times, do a little checklist, how many times I felt unfairly treated. Really get into the observatory awareness of how frequently it happens in the subtlest ways. The wind is blowing the wrong way. My chair is uncomfortable. The temperature is wrong in the room. Somebody said this. They cut me off the road. Somebody left the socks in the middle of the room. The blueberry fell on the floor. Whatever it is, how many ways do you feel like an innocent victim and unfairly treated?
That's still 652.
That is still 652, correct? Paragraph 4. You seek to find an innocent that is not theirs. Okay, I'm just going to stop there. So what this means is I need to solve this problem for me, not for us. And if I'm doing it for me and not us, it's never going to accomplish theirs. So in other words, when I'm doing it for me and not my brother, I'm keeping him out of the circle of atonement and I'm trying to jump in myself, but it's never going to work because I can't get in the circle of atonement unless I bring my brother in. So as long as I'm pointing a finger, judging or attacking, I'm standing outside. And again, the initial practice of this is to simply become aware. I am attacking this one, this one, I'm a big attack machine. And as we're doing that, I can't be here. I've got to be up here for me to observe what I'm doing. So we want to spend our time up here, but we want to do it to the best of our ability without judging or attacking what we see getting played out here. And it becomes more like, well, of course, if I'm aligned with the ego, this is what it would look like. And we're not quite as surprised at the ugliness of the unfolding of the ego. All right, so in this view, you seek to find an innocent that is not theirs, but yours alone, and at the cost of someone else's guilt. So I want them to be guilty so that I can play the part of I'm an innocent victim. And as long as that game is being played, again, we're not being very nice because we're making somebody guilty that isn't the problem. It's me that believes I'm guilty because I separated from God. So I play it down here where it can never be healed. And Jesus is asking us to pull it up here so that we can recognize what the ego is all about. And then question, is that really where I want to play? Is that the sandbox I want to play in any? All right, so me, the innocent victim, you, the guilty party, this just perpetuates and reinforces the mind's belief in its own guilt. And so that's another aspect of this. When I'm playing in the ego arena and perpetuating and judging my brother, I'm literally ordering more time on the carpet and filling it with lots of guilt. When I stop and go, I don't know, workbook number 5, I'm never upset for the reason I think, show me who I am, show me who my brother is. We're then dropping the story of the ego and connecting with a place where guilt doesn't live. Because you don't see guilt on this side of the chart. You see guilt on this side of the chart. And we really want to get to the bottom of the guilt that rides the experience while we're in the separated state. So can innocence be purchased by the giving of your guilt to someone else? Now, again, I put the candy in her drawer, the police are at her door. I have to feel bad about that. There's just no way, and again, it's put down so far, I might not be consciously aware that I'm having that experience. But on a deeper level, I can't not feel the guilt of doing that.
That's why other people exist. Yeah.
And when we recognize, and that's a really good point. And if we recognize that's the whole setup here, but that's the setup of never, seek but not, do not find, and never healing. And, it's almost like we're growing into a more mature way of understanding what the setup is. And again, as Kathleen was saying, but why do we always talk about this instead of this? Until I understand what the setup of the ego is, how deeply seated it is, why it was set it up, and how it keeps working in our lives, I can talk about heaven all I want, but I'm never going to step over there because the door can't be opened as long as I'm over here imagining what heaven could be like. And that doesn't mean if you're having a really down day and you just want to sit and think about what heaven could be like, that there's anything wrong with doing that. Just be aware that from the perspective of the Course, to really be able to step over that preface is to recognize what's holding this one in place. Yeah, again, if you're in a bad way, do whatever the heck you have to do to keep you going for the next day. There's nothing wrong with doing that. But again, this is taking us to a little bit different level. All right, so again, and is it, where did we leave off? And is it innocence that your attack on him attempts to get? So am I really getting innocence when I'm doing this game? And the answer is no, because I'm never going to feel good about myself if I know I'm the one that did it. I can go through those motions, but it's really not answering the problem at all.
Right.
What?
So that's kind of like why I might be hating myself.
Well, that's why everybody hates themselves. That's the whole deal. The killer be killed, this killer could be killed me too. And, you asked the question before, of what we left, who our true identity is. I left my true identity. I left God's true identity, and I left my brother's true identity when I stepped over here. And then I play this whole cockamamie game over here, trying to pretend I'm an innocent victim and make everybody guilty, and nothing is being accomplished.
That's what I mean, it's constantly defeating yourself. So I'm blaming you,
Absolutely.
blaming you, look what you did, it's how you hurt me, all this unjustified, unjust stuff that you did to me. And then I'm hating myself on top of all that because.
Absolutely.
Some knowing that
Yes.
it's me.
Yes. And every time you play another step in the ego, you're hating yourself more.
It just keeps the wheel going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Want to get off the wheel.
Want to get off the
So,
wheel. Yep.
Without a victim and a perpetrator, there would be no stories.
Exactly.
There would be no, what happened to our culture? Well, what happened to our culture? There would be no
Nothing.
literature.
Absolutely. No movies, no theater, none of that.
Nothing.
Yes,
Everything has to do
absolutely.
with
With
a-
the game.
yes.
Absolutely. And we're so addicted to the game, it's really hard for us to just say, no game. Okay, let's go home. Blank sheet. Come on. So we do it one little chunk at a time. When when our misery heightens to the point when we can't tolerate it in that moment, and then a little chunk of the story gets taken away. And then we fall back into the trap of the ego and we play some more until the next moment of hope comes. And that's right. But we have to mature to a point where we desire the boredom, as you're calling it, more than we desire the roller coaster ride. And just like a little kid that you would say, you're at Cedar Point and you'd say, okay, now sit on this bench. I want you to read this book. Well, that would be absurd. That child would, most likely, unless he was a book nerd and he didn't like rides, would not be too thrilled about that choice. But there comes a point where I don't want to get on those rides. Those rides don't serve me anymore. And if we understand, most of us like the highs, but we don't like the lows. And in the dualistic roller coaster, if you have a high, you have to have a low. And when we start to go, wait a minute, that's not working. And we can't have this forced on us. This has to become a process where this is what I want more than the other. And you can think about that and think, oh yeah, I want that, I want that. But then the situation comes up and you realize, no, I don't really want it. And we're being asked to observe sometimes that I really don't want that yet. I'm not ready to relinquish my stories of insanity. And you can call them insane all you want, and they are insane, but they're my stories. And there's a big attraction to that aspect of their mind. And since, the hero of the dream is all about me, I don't want to let my stories go because that means there's no me. And that's a real big threat to the ego.
Yeah, which is not wholly empty hands.
That is not wholly empty hands. That is correct. Yeah. And so literally we continue playing in the arena of the insanity, whether it's positive or negative, so that I can maintain me, the hero. And understand in oneness, there is no hero or heroes. There's just one. We're all the same. And that's not, that's not ego friendly at all. And again, we're so addicted to the games that we've attached to as being my story, my experience, my, and the personal just overrides anything that has to do with we're all the same. And at the same time, we're not being asked to fix it. We're being asked to bring it to him with the holy empty hands and ask him to fill that in. Oh, go ahead.
The really highs, you have to have a high, and you have to have a low.
Mhm.
And then can they get like just a little bit?
Yes, what will happen is it's going to look like this, and then it's going to start looking more like this, and then eventually it will be more like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Bert said something that's like how fast you can jump back.
Right,
to
exactly,
north,
exactly.
Walking on the tight.
Yes, yes,
How back, fast.
Correct.
You can
Yeah.
get back to.
yes.
center.
And that's exactly what happens. Initially, it's just like, and then once in a while you'll remember, but eventually as you begin to see the reflection of love and you trust it more and more, it will just be like, oh, okay, all right. Instead it used to be like this, and then we remember to come back. So yeah, definitely. And Dale, I apologize. You had a question a long time. Are you even still on there? Would you?
No,
like
it's all
to
good.
share?
Don't worry
Sorry
about it.
about that. You
Nope,
got it?
it's okay.
Okay.
It's okay. Everything's
right.
good.
I saw the hand and somebody was talking and I thought as soon as they get done talking, I'll call on you, and obviously I didn't, so I apologize. Well, if you come up,
No,
okay,
no worries.
okay, sounds good. Thank you. All right. Is it not safer to believe that you are innocent of this and victimized despite your innocence? So we want to continue to play the game. Yeah, right. Come on. Whatever way the game of guilt is placed, there must be loss. I win, you lose. They win, I lose. Okay, we're on the teeter-totter ride. And in oneness, the ride looks like this. Not fun if you're used to doing this. Okay. And the answer is peace instead of chaos. But we're addicted to chaos, and we don't find that particularly friendly for the most part yet. But there'll come a point in time when, as Beata said, I welcome that. And don't feel bad if you don't welcome that yet. Just observe where you are, become aware that's where I am on the journey. And if I want to ask for help along the way at any time, I'm welcome to do that as well. If I want to come to that place where I welcome that. All right, someone must lose his innocence that someone else can take it from him, making it his own. So again, we're playing the teeter-totter ride of who's in charge. I'm the innocent victim. No, you're the innocent. The whole deal is playing out, and it's all to reinforce that I'm the hero of the dream. I'm the center of attention. The only one that's important is me. I, me, my, you name it. Yeah. And again, the process is observe. Watch how you want to be the center of attraction. Whether it's, I don't want to be seen, or it's because I do want to be seen. It doesn't matter how it gets played out. Just so there's a me and I am in charge of what's going on here. And just become more and more aware, and don't judge it, don't attack it, just become aware. Look at the results of choosing for the ego look like. And eventually you're going to go, ugh, and you're going to be willing to drop it because it's gross and disgusting. We're not kind, we're not loving. We make our brother guilty so we can play the part of an innocent victim, all the while when we know I'm not an innocent victim. I believe I separated from God and kicked him off the throne. But in order to get to the next step, which is God's response of nothing happens, I have to go through the filter of this to become aware of what I'm up to eventually come to trust that he has the answer that goes beyond all this ridiculous stories. So there's hope, but we still got to dig through that mountain. All right, it's that time. So Everybody take a nice big deep breath and let it all go. Forgive us our illusions, Father, and help us to accept our true relationship with you, in which there are no illusions and where none can ever enter. Our holiness is yours. What can there be in us that needs forgiveness when yours is perfect? The sleep of forgetfulness is only the unwillingness to remember your forgiveness and your love. Let us not wander into temptation, for the temptation of the Son of God is not your will. And let us receive only what you have given, and accept but this into the minds that you've created and which you love. Amen. Okay, go forth among the people, observe, pay attention, see all the blocks in front of you, and have a wonderful week.